Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Suzerain, a new text-based sort of choose-your-own-adventure political drama that I've been playing a little bit lately, and I live-streamed recently over on my Twitch channel. This is part number 6 of our series. It's a bit of a longer episode. This one is actually a little bit over an hour, and it sort of is the last part of our most recent live stream of the game. And in this episode, we will be doing some interesting things. We'll be having maybe a beer with my son, so getting a little bit of family time in, while also dealing with economic and health policy debates or questions that are going to be thrust upon us, while also trying to amend the Constitution and dealing with Supreme Court justices. So a lot's going on in this episode. Hope you guys enjoy. It isn't the most action-packed game, but it is a game I really do enjoy and is pretty interesting. But leave your thoughts below. And let me know if this is something you want to see continue. As I said, this was the most recent episode that I recorded at this time after our last live stream. So if you guys want to see more of this, I'll continue playing it. Otherwise, maybe we'll move on to something else. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and jump back into the live stream, and I'll catch you guys at the end. It's great to see you. Evening. Welcome, Justice Garcia and Chief Justice Hawker. Good to see you indeed. Please. We all took our seats on two opposite sofas and made ourselves comfortable. How are your first couple of months, Mr. President? I hope you're faring well. Thank you. It's very busy, but I'm doing good. To be honest, it was a rough start. I'm doing extremely good. No need to worry. Okay. Thank you. It's very busy, but I'm doing good. It will only get busier. Yet I think you're doing a good job so far. Considering all that's happened around us with the shootings near the palace and the soldiers on our borders, it's a troubling time. We appreciate your concerns. So, you probably know why we're here. You're here to bribe me. Please enlighten us, Mr. Hawker. We know you're working on a new constitution. The Supreme Court does not approve of this. With all due respect, the Constitution needs to be updated, sir. I am sure you are well aware of the public demand and our circumstances. Is that so? I see that you are the one who is not aware of our actual circumstances. You want to make a weaker constitution in the midst of problems from both inside and out. Even if your proposal passes the Assembly, I will make sure it will not pass the Supreme Court. That much is clear. You haven't even seen the proposal yet, Mr. Hawker. Isn't it too soon to be against it? Do you think I live under a rock, Mr. President? I know what goes on. Yet you, Mr. President, seem to be only partially informed about the current situation. Please let us explain the reason for our stance. Oh, please explain. We're protecting the Constitution because it works, Mr. President. It is efficient, and it gives you the authority to lead the nation with swift decisions. Sordland has more important problems and threats that we should face right now, instead of nitpicking about some paragraphs of the Constitution. We have a potential war within our borders. Mr. President, I know that you're a busy man, so I'll make this quick. We all know that Sordish security forces found stashes of Rumburgian weapons in the hideouts of Blundish separatists. KA-74s are roaming inside Sordland at this moment. As much as Rumburg poses a direct threat, now it is clear that they are also intervening in our country and weaponizing our minorities against us. It is not unprecedented to think that the Bloods will start their terror again with their new toys. Not to mention the fights that broke out between the left and right wing after the shooting of Bernard Carcass. Communists are rising with the support of the United Cantana. The chaos is imminent for Sordland. And sadly, we don't see the administration taking the necessary precautions. You said you will not focus on military during your term. Under current circumstances, that cannot be tolerated at any costs. Mr. Hawker, the court has no jurisdiction over these matters. We're taking the necessary steps, no need to worry. I did promise that, but circumstances have changed. Tolerate? You should be more careful of your word choice, huh? Dickie Gee, thank you very much for the follow. You might want me to stand up to him directly? Tolerate? You should be more careful of your word choice. Surely a decision to destroy Sordland cannot be tolerated, whether it comes from you or President Sol. Why can't you admit that we're making sense here? But regardless of that, you are also aware that the armed Blutish separatists have direct connections with the Workers' Party of Blutia. Workers' Party is a democratic party unlike the militias. They are not the same. I mean, they're all Bloods. They claim otherwise. Everybody knows that. Workers' Party is a democratic party unlike the militias. They are not the same. They may claim that they have no ties with the separatists, but most of their members used to be part of them before they formed the Workers' Party. How about the name, Mr. President? It is not the Workers' Party of Sordland, is it? As far as I'm aware, there's no nation called Blutia around here. What is this all about? The only reason they're not here in the assembly is because of the electoral threshold. They have gotten quite big. They're clearly getting outside help, and their connections to the paramilitary Blutish forces cannot be denied. And all of a sudden, the reformists are trying to decrease the electoral threshold so that Blutish separatists can be legitimized in the assembly to achieve their aim of independence. So I just increased the threshold. You think that's Mr. Richter's intention? I suspect his intentions are grander, but I wish the only issues were Blutish terrorists and Rumburg. Reformists suggest that changes would also bring the communists who are backed by the United Contana into the assembly. Do you see the pattern yet? I apologize, gentlemen, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. You're saying reformists are working for the foreign powers. There's no evidence about any of this. There's no evidence about any of this. You guys are the frickin' Supreme Court, and you're promoting all this conspiracy nonsense. Haven't you been briefed by your security team? Maybe you should suspect them as well. Oh my God. We should take necessary measures against communist and Blutish plots, as well as increasing our military budget against a possible conflict with Rumburg. And of course, not fall into the traps of the reformists by listening to their demands. They're clearly plotting to weaken the president and the whole administration in order to exploit the situation. Which brings us to some very important information that we have. It's definitely something you need to hear, and it can change absolutely everything. With all due respect, Mr. President, I think this is getting slightly ridiculous. Hey, Figgin, I'm doing well. Please explain, Mr. Hawker. The person in question is Mr. Franz Richter himself, the leader of the reformists. We have enough information to infer that he has ties with Arkansia. Arkansia is aggressively growing their influence around the world, and now we have Mr. Richter coming up with these ridiculous demands for a new constitution amidst a chaotic period in Sordland. All of these pieces seem to fit precisely. That is why the Supreme Court will be doing what it takes to stop these reformers and preserve the Constitution. How would you know that Mr. Richter has ties to Arkansia? We all know that he's been in Arkansia many times because it's been documented, but what would you think if he had been making hidden flights to the country? He was hiding his flights to Arkansia? He was. He's been spotted in a hotel in Arkansia last year where they held the conference on economic development in volatile regions. Right around this time, he started to influence the masses into believing that our constitution is the reason for everything bad. His trip was not documented. He's probably seeing like a mistress or something. I also have a couple of more photos of him that were taken in Arkansia in different cities, one from a couple of months back. Again, none of it is documented. He's also attended another event in Lesbia last week. The Arkansian Minister of Foreign Affairs was there too. How could any of this be undocumented? We don't know. Even if he used a private plane, we would be able to get this information on his flight. That means he has people helping them from the inside. Many Solis were already following his lead for quite some time. Mr. President, I cannot give away their identities, but I can give you the evidence. This seems a little bit conspiratorial for me. Yeah, right? Our Supreme Court's literally spying on political adversaries. Anonymous sources, of course, Medic. Yeah. Lucian skimmed through the documents with skepticism, which slowly turned into surprise. These seem to be real. These seem to suggest that Arkansia is behind the reformists. Their demands will only benefit Arkansia. They want us to have a weaker administration while we face these threats. This is clearly a plot against Sordland. I bet Rumburg is part of their plan too. This cannot be a coincidence that they are weaponizing our minorities against us around the same time. Now you understand the reasons for our current stance and also our suspicion about your advisors, who clearly have not given you this vital information. We appreciate the information, Mr. Hawker, but I advise against jumping to conclusions right away. We still have to check the information. It's clearly an emergency, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about how we can work together. We cannot wait for the process of the Assembly to take care of these issues. You must exercise your presidential powers for a fast and effective solution, which means you might need to suspend parts of the Constitution to give more authority to our security forces to deal with these issues. We must officially investigate Mr. Richter as well. You can devise a strong security decree if you can base it on the Articles 57 and 58, which gives the President the right to suspend parts of the Constitution to deal with national security threats. You can directly bypass the Assembly in such a situation. The only thing you need is the Supreme Court to allow the emergency to be declared, and you have our word on that. Sir, I think that's going a bit too far. We shouldn't escalate things too fast. Mr. President, why don't we talk in private, only two of us? We can devise a plan together. I know we can use the Constitution to our advantage. This guy's a frickin' conniving bastard. That'd be interesting, Mr. Prez. I don't know that the game lets me do that, but if I could use the emergency powers to purge the Supreme Court, I don't know if that's an option. Part of me isn't opposed to meeting with him separately, but I don't want to lose Lucian's support. He's one of my key advisors. So we've got, what of the four options, guys, what do you think we should do? Trisextan, are you saying 2 based on what your comments are here? Mr. Pez says there's only one way to find out. Tom in Korea wants me to meet with him alone and then slap him like a boss. So Trisextan, you're saying 4. Lieutenant T-Roy, you're saying 2. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but I don't know that I want to turn the court against me quite that quickly. We're going to stay with reforms. You're the ones making the mistake. Well, I just made an enemy of the Supreme Court. We need to take care of them. We have to make sure our reforms pass the court. How dare they talk to me like that? I'm not scared of them. Assassinate them? Orso will be doing whatever it takes to damage you. We need to be careful. There's still many old guard sympathizers in our party. We can't let them divide our party. And they'll definitely try. Well, we just made enemies in our own party, likely. The old guard. Chief Justice Orso Hawker has been spotted entering the Maroon Palace. Our sources are intrigued by the timing of this visit as happening right after the increased conversations around the so-called democratic reforms. All right, we'll continue. Yeah, if you can pretend to work with them, that would be interesting. Like, kind of fake it till you make it. Trials of Democracy. School poisoning in Ribble? Police have arrested the principal of a high school in Ribble in southern Bergia, where 12 students died after eating a free meal laced with pesticide. What the fuck? Lieutenant Leroy, I don't think it's on Mac, but I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I'm playing it through Steam, so I have no idea. All right. Economy's not getting any better. Tensions are rising between our ally of Angolia and Vagesland. Maybe I should have gone with the communist side. I feel like my neighbors would have been more supportive generally. Narble, lack of hospitals. So we're probably going to get like a healthcare related issue. Security units have arrested 3 priests and... Okay. A massive counter-protest against young swords led by local politician known to be aligned with the Red Youth resulted in many injuries and property damage. Subsequently, Young Sword and National Front Party flags were burnt, which caused tensions to escalate. Okay. Communist books burned in Bourne. All right, so things aren't really getting any better. Not quite as much overt violence. Recession hits farmers again. As per the latest news from Lavachen, the farming industry has taken another hit. There's reports that 16% of all wheat in Lavachen are rotting in barns for lack of buyers. Great. Well, wouldn't the trade deal with Angola help? They want agricultural deals, right? A barbecue with Frank. By the way, what turn are we on? We're still on turn 2. All right, we'll have a barbecue with my son. It was a Saturday afternoon, my first break from work in what felt like years, and the weather couldn't have been more perfect. Trying to keep my mind off the upheaval sparked by the circus assassination, I lit the backyard grill. Monica and Deanna were out shopping for craft supplies, and I'd given the staff the day off. It was just myself and Frank at home. Oh. It does support Mac on the GOG store. Okay, good. I wasn't sure how he felt about me at the moment, but I did know how he felt about barbecued ribs. What a line. Our cook had left some marinating in the refrigerator. Sure enough, as soon as Frank glimpsed the grill and the meat, he stepped outside to join me. Gonna spend some quality time with your old man, have ya? Sure, if you can spare a few minutes out of your busy schedule. Children who talk back to their fathers don't get dinner. Fan these flames, will you? Look, son, I'm preoccupied with matters of national importance. I'm sorry, I know I haven't been around very often lately, but I'm happy to see you now. It's okay. I know you've got the most stressful job in the country, and you've got to feed your family on top of it all. We both chuckled. We both chuckled. He grabbed the fan and started quickly waving it over the coals. The fire roared to life. He turned to look at me with a grin on his face as if he was expecting praise. Not bad, son. Not bad. Oh, I can be a hard-ass dad. Don't act like you've done something special, Frank. All right, I'll go with not bad, son, not bad. Thank you, sir. It is in our utmost interest to fulfill our duties with precision. The grilling shall commence in exactly 1 minute and 32 seconds. That was a spot-on impersonation of Lucien. We looked at each other for a second, then burst out laughing. I realized my throat was parched. There was a six-pack of beer in the kitchen. Frank, can you get me a beer? Why don't you bring us a couple of beers? Get up and grab a beer. I'll have a beer with my son. I can't remember how old he is. Is he like 16 or something like that? Colt 45 malt? I think he's like 16. I mean, I don't know that it's a good idea to like, whatever. You mean I can? But Mom told me. He stopped himself quickly, ran inside, and returned with 2 beers. We cracked them open, clinked the bottles, and gazed out at the city's skyline. Shots with that. Shot, 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 shot. For a moment, my thoughts flashed back to my childhood and my relationship with my own father. My father was a hard-working man and always had our best interests in mind, or at least that's what he always said. But he had a temper and would lash out at my mother in fights I could hear from my bedroom. By the time I was Frank's age, we seldom spoke. Now that I was the president, I was facing more stress than my father ever had. I would have to work hard, not to take my frustrations out on my family. Dad, can I ask you something? Or family, you can ask anything. It's just, I feel like there's so much you've been hiding from me. About your past and about what's going on right now. Like at dinner the night after the ball, you told me everything was under control, but it wasn't, was it? I know what happened in the 20s. We learned about it all in school. Now with the protests and the riots, is it going to be the same thing? Dad, is there going to be a civil war in Sordland? I hope not. But what was it like back then? Uncle Pater said that the two of you went through a lot. I'm not a kid anymore, you can tell me. Images of soldiers advancing towards me and my friends, weapons drawn of people I knew, friends and neighbors being dragged through the streets and murdered in alleyways. I didn't really do anything in the Civil War, remember? My dude was like totally just like, I'm uninvolved, don't come after me. The shock and grief on the faces of fathers and mothers and orphaned children. Those were dark times. But you're nearly a grown man. Let's talk about it. Actually, never mind. Let's not talk about the past. Tell Frank about the coup of 27. I was barely older than you are now, studying history at the Dyer University of Culture. I was a freshman, excited and young. I had just left the classroom to go back home as I heard the sound of multiple vehicles approaching the campus gates. As I got closer, I realized there were military camouflage tanks carrying hundreds of soldiers. They pointed guns at us. The same soldiers that were supposed to protect Sordland's citizens pointed their guns at us. They immediately took control of the facilities. One of my friends asked what was going on and was arrested immediately. More people got angry and gathered in protest. I didn't run, I just didn't participate. I mean, so I need to know, part of the problem with this kind of a question is I need to know if it's going to, like, if I choose 2, is it going to make it out like I'm some hero? Because I don't want to lie to that extent, but I don't know that I want to admit that I was a coward either, right? Like, if 2 is just, oh, this all happened, but don't tell me that I, like, ran away, then, because it didn't say I ran for my life, it just said I just observed and I didn't do anything, whereas Peter joined the protest. You need to bolster your son's confidence in his father and president? He'll lose respect for a coward. Yeah, I mean, part of me is wondering about empathy, Llewellyn, because number one is a legit, like, my son is obviously worried. He's obviously scared. So if he can understand that his father, at his age, was scared as well, He may have a connection and say, listen, my father grew into this leader, he grew into this president, but he's not perfect. He did have problems. He didn't always exude confidence and perfection. And so one seems to be a more grounded answer that shows that I'm human. So I think I'm actually going to go with 1. Could be risky. I guess we'll see. Seeing the crowd gathering, I knew something was going to happen, something bad. I decided that it was impossible to go against armed men, and I ran away from the scene. Ran away from my friends who were getting arrested and shot to save my own dear life like a coward. It still feels like my flight was justified. Anyone would do the same. I still feel like my flight was shameful. I should have stood my ground. So I will go with 2 here because this expresses regret that I wasn't a stronger person at the time. I still feel like my flight was shameful. I should have stood my ground. No one could sleep that night because of gunshots and sounds of boots. I can't forget the screams to this day. Uh-oh, his shoulder slumped heavily. Does that mean he's disappointed in his father? It was right after I met your mother. We had both joined the same political debate group to push for change after the coup of 27, but over the next year, the state of Sordland deteriorated. People started picking sides, and I tried to stay away as much as I could. Then one night it happened. 2 different factions in the army, one of them led by a fascist General Luderin and the other by a socialist General Ricard, started fighting against each other. It was a bloodbath. Nowhere was safe. I stayed out of it. People organized protests either for or against Ricard. I heard about the clashes the next day. Many of my friends were shot or arrested. I isolated myself for months. That's enough for today. It's okay, I shouldn't have asked you about it. I know I don't understand how easy my life is sometimes. One more thing, though. I know you managed not to take any sides. Do you mind if I ask why? I didn't want to be part of the violence? They're 2 sides of the same coin. That's what I'll say. They're 2 sides of the same coin. I know I complain sometimes, but my problems are nothing compared to what you went through. I'm here to listen to them no matter what they are. What problems? You're damn right. Your generation will never understand. Young Thuggers, this is my first time playing, or Young Thugger. This is my first time playing, so I can't say I've played it. 3 is okay, boomer, but he's my kid, so I'm here to listen no matter what they are. I had the same nightmares that night. ATA Sergey Nowak, thank you very much for the follow. All right, well, that didn't seem to really... I don't know if that went well or not. I think my son was disappointed that I wasn't a hero, but, like, on the flip side, like, I didn't want to lie. Young Thuggers, thank you very much for the follow. There's just all this violence that I can't seem to do anything about. Prisoners riot in one of the prisons. Morna industrial output concerns. Their industrial output numbers this year are 12% lower than last. They're requesting additional support to improve the industrial capacity. Okay. Many members of the USP, led by Albion Klavan and the reformist wing of the party, clarified their demands from the government in the party Congress. For the upcoming constitutional reforms, Albin Klavan stated that without minister reforms, they won't be able to stand behind the new reform package. Minister reforms? Does that mean... That's the more extensive reforms that I don't really want to do, right? Moist Bread, thank you for the follow. It looks like we've got an event in Narble. Been a fan. Everybody ready for the presidential visit to Narble? We're still on chapter 1 of the game, by the way. I think there's at least 3 chapters, so I'm curious to see. I mean, we've been going for 5 hours into this game. I wonder how long the gameplay lasts in it. I've seen a bunch of people saying they finished it already, but Young Thuggers, thank you very much for the Prime sub. Appreciate it. Always appreciate the support. Enjoy the emotes. You can use the Butcher emote, the Mark 14 Torpedo Dud emote, the Iron Brigade emote that looks more like a pilgrim than anything. Isn't there one more? Oh, the Scotch glass emote. I'm drinking some bourbon right now. All right, let's get going. Beware assassination attempts, and no, I don't have the game myself to know in advance. 10 to 15 hours for a full game? All right. Good to know, ADA. All right. I was traveling to the snow-covered city of Narble in the Nargis region for the Rural Development Forum organized by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. The mountainous city of Narble had gritty tones to it. It is mostly regarded as one of the poorer cities in Sordland. Its people were hardy and wary. Even after the discovery of natural resources in the area, years of neglect by the central government were apparent on the buildings and the general infrastructure. Natural resources, namely gas and oil, were now under the control of Gascom, which elevated the corporation to a place of power. My task in this forum was mainly symbolic. Fake smiles and handshakes with oil barons, meeting with local politicians, but most importantly of all, to make sure that Narble does not feel like it was forgotten by the government. The scenery so far, however, was a reflection of Narble's neglect. Main roads to the city were not maintained well. There were many bumps and empty, discolored spots in the asphalt. Navigating and swerving to avoid the inconveniences, our motorcade finally started nearing the city. As if my discomfort from the bumpy ride was apparent to him, Surge rolled down the partition window. We'll be arriving at Hotel West in a few minutes, sir. Can't say it's been good, whatever. Thank you for letting me know. Anytime, it is my duty. How's life, Surge? Sir, I just want to say it's been great these last 2 months. As you know, my wife Susan recently gave birth to our son, sir, and now my daughter just started at a very good high school in Holsword. Get ready, Surge, because life's about to become a lot busier. That's great news, Surge. I'm happy for you. I appreciate it, sir. Truly, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to afford a good private school if she scored less in the entrance exams. But I shouldn't have made my insecurity get to me. Erica outsmarts me all the time. I'm very proud to have a daughter like her. I also hope that Deanna will grow to be like her mother someday. So that means she must have taken the smarts after her mother. I do not value insecurity in my employees, Serge. I'm sure she will, sir. After all, she is the daughter of a lion and a lioness. My daughter looks up to the First Lady for inspiration, and it's not just limited to my daughter, sir. She's an inspiration for almost all women in the country. But at the same time, it must be hard for the First Lady as well. All this attention, adjusting to new high-profile life, and a husband that has great responsibility. You are right. It's hard for both of us. It must be, sir. We sometimes forget that the important people in life between all responsibility and rush. You know those words those we care for. Oh my goodness, I can't read tonight. Guess I haven't been going for over 2.5 hours. Young Thuggers, it is very narrative, but so if you choose the exact same answers out of like hundreds of potential answers, yes, you'll probably get the same results in the end. But from what I've heard is there are actually quite a few ways the game can go and a lot of variability. So In terms of like replayability, you might want to play as a moderate once. You might want to play as a far right, far left, or something left leaning or right leaning. I imagine there's at least like 5 or 6 different play styles or playthroughs that you can probably get out of this. Which, frankly, I think the game's only like $15, and I think it's on sale for like 12. So if you can get like 40 hours of playthrough on this on multiple playthroughs, like I think it's well worth the cash. But that's just me. It's not an EU game where you're going to play like 2,000 hours, though. All right. I agree. Have I told you, sir? We named my son George. The doctor said he's very healthy, and thankfully, so is my wife. That's good. I hope the hospital had a good service. Tell me more about Susan. What kind of a person is she? She has a good heart. Her family comes from Sarna, so they're a little more traditional. I really like her selflessness. Selflessness is a respectable trait to have. Should be mutual. That's what matters most. I already started thinking about their university education, especially Erica's. I want to send her to a good private school, but with the current state of the economy, it's going to be hard for us. You know what? I can pay for the education of your child, -1 personal wealth. Damn straight. I am just generous. Here you go. Here's fucking cash. I'm like, at the end of, is it Clear and Present Danger when Jack Ryan promises to pay for the education of some random guy who gets killed? A true man of the people. Mr. President, there's no way I can... Mr. President, I don't know how I can... Maybe this will save my life, right? Like, at some point, if I get in a coup or something, my driver will save my life. I hope you return the favor by helping someone in need someday, just like I did. I will, sir, of course. I think I've decided. I will give your name to my boy. My boy! Gorgi Anton Wolkner. He may grow strong like you are. I'm sure he will. The Hotel West was supposedly the best hotel in Narble. The large 25-story main building was undoubtedly one of the taller and more expensive buildings in the city. It towered over the nearby slums and had been a target for protests when it was first built. A crowd was gathered in front of the hotel with the welcoming committee at its center. As we approached the red carpet entrance, I could see the mayor of Narble and his top aides. Serge got out of the car and opened the door. He bowed his head respectfully and gestured toward the entrance. See you later, Serge. Thank you, sir. Likewise. As soon as I left the vehicle, the fresh air of Narble filled my lungs. Almost immediately, everyone present in the crowd flocked over to me with an excessive display of courtesy, smiles, and handshakes, while I donned the mask of a politician. A mask that I was very used to. Personal wealth decreased. President pays for the driver of his blah blah. Protests appear calmer. As protests continued nationwide, tensions eased in some cities. Still, several major cities, including Dire and Lavachen, did have some scattered reports of violence on Monday night. Tens of thousands in Dire, Circe's hometown, walked in a memorial march though police moved in on the thinning crowd as the evening settled. Well, maybe my speech helped. Shocking misogynist rally. Okay. Soul needs answers to answer for his crimes. Labor unions right march. Okay. Education privatization proven successful. Well, I'm gonna guess that's gonna be another thing we have to deal with. Franz Richter, leader of the PFJP, recently outlined their demands for the reform package. He declared that without the implementation of term limits and limited decrees, it would be very difficult for him and his party to stand behind the reform package. Young Sword suspected of terror attack. Well, hopefully there's fewer of these now. It sounds like things might be calming. By the way, the highway is halfway complete. That's good, right? All right, Narble. Briefing on the current welfare situation. Do you love me now, Father? Oh, Frank, so dramatic. What? Did I miss something? Frank is despondent now, losing faith in his father, and will turn to alcohol like his father gave him. I hope not, Trisextan, I hope not. I arrived at the meeting room for my talk with Sierra and Pascal. Before beginning, I took a moment to appreciate the view from the balcony. The mountains of Narble were completely covered with snow. While I was mesmerized by the scenery, Pascal Beniwal walked up to me. My Minister of Health was ironically somewhat portly, having gained a few pounds since his breakthrough as a best-selling writer, but his authority on social affairs could not be questioned. Such a spectacular view. The Minister of Education joined us on the balcony. Dressed in a sky-blue pantsuit, her preference for trousers over dresses had made her the subject of much palace gossip, but it did not seem to bother her in the slightest. Spectacular indeed, but if you look at the opposite direction, you'll see what Seoul's decades of neglect did to the city. Most of the people living in Narble are workers, farmers, and their wives and children. They're breaking their backs for close to no pay, all thanks to greedy corporations. Whatever. I'd much rather be in Holstord right now. We can't really blame the companies. That's just how they work. Yes, we can. Simpler companies are doing much better for their workers in United Cantana and Arcasia. If you look past the view, you can see the real problems. Real problems like poverty. Well put, Miss Walda. I don't need to tell you about my own experiences with poverty. I'm sure you have too. Am I right, Mr. President? We knew less fortunate families, even though we belong to the middle class ourselves. We've all gone through difficult times. True, but some lives are more difficult than others, like ours was, and still is for hundreds of thousands of Sordland. You don't have to have been poor to sympathize with the plight of the impoverished, much as you don't have to have been born a woman to recognize Sordland's need for parity among the sexes. Isn't it time Holsword addressed these issues, rather than bowing to the wishes of the hawks and fearmongers in the establishment and diverting yet more resources to the military and law enforcement? Our welfare, healthcare, and education systems have been decaying since the recession. Sordland's poor communities are losing hope. Hopelessness and lack of opportunity can drive people to extreme solutions. We're seeing increased crime, domestic violence, rising inequality between men and women. Lilith Graff will take care of crime since she's an expert on the subject. Those issues must be tackled from different directions. We need to engage it holistically. I'm planning to help by using an increased budget to improve the quality of healthcare. That could prove useful, but we need to be doing a lot more. Education has similar issues. There's another subject I want to mention that I've been working on improving the rights of workers in our country. I mean, I'm really more focused on education and free market, right? Tristan or Trixton? Oh, I'm sorry. I pronounce it the way I did, Tristan, because you have a big uppercase X in the middle of it, so I thought it was intended as like a split there. There's always room for improvement, and it's good to hear you're pushing for it. Appreciate the kind words, Mr. President. I will always do my best to not let you down. Okay. To make a decision, I would need to evaluate the contents and details. in detail. Sordland has a free healthcare system except for a few private hospitals operating under it. Most of the populace receives adequate treatment. Health issues primarily appear in rural areas due to the lack of quality services. I'm doing my best to ensure that citizens of all ages receive the best health care they can. I also personally want to solve the high infant and maternal mortality problem. 31,594 doctors, 73,680 nurses. The data shows that per 10,000 people in urban areas, there's about 11 doctors, while in rural areas, there's only 3. Treatment time is still too high due to the low number of doctors in rural areas, which get barely any proper coverage. How many hospital beds are there per 1,000 citizens? 10 beds per 1,000 citizens, which is a very good number according to our comparisons with our neighbors. We see lower numbers in the countries of Angola, Valen, but obviously can't match Lespasia or Vagsland. Angola and Valen are hardly countries to take as a standard, but it is good to know we aren't in a huge health crisis yet. Life expectation and mortality rates? Life expectancy is 65 years, and the infant mortality rate is a worrying 85 per 1,000 births, while our maternal mortality rate is 90 per 1,000. Okay. Hear about the education system. Swordfish education is free, but we have a very outdated system that I want to reform. The other important issue is the lack of access to education in rural areas, especially for young girls. Your administration has the power to solve both problems. My highest priority is to get enough funding to be able to build schools in rural areas while I cleanse our educational system of its nationalistic indoctrination and sexist teaching. How many students and teachers do we have? Currently, there are about 5 million students, 3 million in primary education, 1 million in secondary, and 1 million in tertiary. There are 155,316 teachers. We should help children to question and educate themselves? I'm not a big fan of self-education. I don't think that'll be very efficient. Poor healthcare builds a hardy people full of character. Yeah, we're going to the rural-urban divide here. You need an in-the-weeds emote? I don't know. Maybe, Newhauser. Maybe. I didn't see you there. Literacy rate of Sordland is at 80%. This is a very good indicator for future growth, but it needs to increase. It's far lower than among girls than boys. If I remember correctly, most illiterates are areas in Bergia and England, although Lavacan skews the statistics for Nargis region. Tell me more about the urban and rural education. Urban areas have 3 times the number of schools per 10,000 people compared to rural areas. Rural areas also suffer from lack of teachers. I can imagine teachers not preferring desolate areas. That's not a very good ratio. I think my campaign promise was to work on education, right? What is it, Sierra? Look at this impoverished city. The streets full of potholes. The hospital barely functioning. The school half open. This is not just about Sol or even Alfonso failing. This decay in Sordland's forgotten regions has been going on for many decades due to the structural corruption, which is fueled by capitalism. I'm sorry, Sierra, I've already promised to work on capitalism, okay? We're not going to be a communist society. That remains to be seen. I'm working on a new education system, and your support would be welcome. One way or another, we need to transform. Greed and unchecked capitalism will not magically provide for the people. My plans require an increase in the government budget. I aim to solve the problems we highlighted with the allocated money. By building schools in these less fortunate rural areas and through fundamental changes to the education system, I will unlock the potential of all of our children, boys and girls alike. I'm a mastermind. I'm going to unlock all of our children's potential. Improving the situation in rural areas is indeed a good idea. Our election mandate was to improve education. We will deliver on this. This brings hope to the table, which needs to be followed by action. There is much to be done, and if we are given the budget, there will be opportunities to implement policies that push education to the next level. Wouldn't a promotion of private education help create additional funds? Yes, but at what cost? I'm not a supporter of the private sector in education because at the end of the day, they're focused on profit first. Okay, he wants to work on healthcare. Okay. Sierra's butting in more about private-public debates. I appreciate your briefings and plans. We will reconvene at the budget meeting. Huh. Okay. Well, young Swords member found decapitated. I shouldn't laugh at that. Someone with their head chopped off or something or other. Mobile mine disaster. Coal mines collapsed in Mortal. Emergency response teams were dispatched immediately. Due to the sheer size of the disaster, additional manpower and supplies were requested from nearby cities. Initial investigations show that an underground fire started due to the neglect in working situations by Needham Mining Corporation. Current death toll is 82. I would assume in counting, maybe in climbing. I don't know. When am I going to get to do any foreign policy? We've only sort of briefly touched on some potential trade deals. There's been no real foreign policy yet. Ban youth organizations. Read the reports from Wholesword on NFP reforms. Read the report from Wholesword. Workers' rights bill nears completion. Announced today that the NFP is completely against any threshold reform. He specifically emphasized that this would lead to unwanted elements entering the assembly and that he's outright against any changes to the 10% threshold. An investigation on the influence of Young Swords on the Red Youth Organization on the post-assassination unrest has concluded both organizations haven't officially organized or called for illegal actions, but several low to mid-level leaders from both have links to insightful actions that led to deaths, injuries, and instability. This allows us to ban the organizations. I'm not going to ban them. That it's a little bit dictatorial. All right. Finalize the draft constitutional changes. Good morning, Mr. President. Tyranthil, thank you very much for the follow. All or nothing. How are you doing today? Fine, thank you. More importantly, how are you, sir? I feel better now that I've seen you, Livia. Ooh, that's going to be a little bit insightful, but we're going to do it. She averted her eyes away from me and smiled. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just a charmer, okay? It doesn't mean anything more than me being kind. She paused before taking my coat. It looked like she had something on her mind. Bad choice, Bubble. Mr. Rayne, can you give me a hint about your reform plans? If you ask me, taking away the judge's immunity is long overdue, but it might anger a lot of people in these halls. I'll take that into consideration. I hope you keep me informed. What are you, a frickin' spy? Olivia equals Monica Lewinsky. I'm gonna get... Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mr. President. Finally time to get this proposal going. After your modifications, we will be starting the process. Let's start. According to Articles 77 and 82, the President may veto a bill by returning it to the Assembly with a written statement. The articles do not contain any information on how to override a veto. As a consequence, the President has an absolute veto power that cannot be overridden by the Grand National Assembly under any circumstances. So we can remove the vetoes. The new Constitution will not include any veto powers. The President may not block any legislation passed by the Grand National Assembly. That's nuts. Limited vetoes. 3/5 majority can override. The new Constitution will allow the Grand National Assembly to override a veto with 3/5 majority. We'll go with limit. Well, I don't really have a choice here, right? Remove the Supreme Court vote. That's the only option I have. All right, impeachment process. According to Article 17, the President of Sordland is not responsible for the actions performed in the exercise of the presidential duties, except in the case of high treason or violation of the Constitution. In such cases, the President may be impeached by the Supreme Court in a joint session with an absolute majority of its members. Therefore, the impeachment process only includes the Supreme Court, and it gives them great power over the executive. The Assembly and Supreme Court may impeach with 2/3 majority vote in both the Grand National Assembly and the Supreme Court. The Assembly may impeach. The President may be impeached with 2/3 majority in the Grand National Assembly. I guess we can do the Assembly and the Supreme Court. Part of me says don't change. I don't even remember anyone asking for this change. But I guess this is a compromise where the Supreme Court keeps their power, but the Assembly gets a little bit more power as well. According to the Constitution, the President appoints the ministers to the Council of Ministers from elected members of the Assembly. This requires no confidence vote from the Grand National Assembly. Confidence vote will be required. The President may nominate ministers, which will require confidence vote from the Grand National Assembly for their appointment. Grand National Assembly nominates the ministers. No, we're not going to have the Grand National Assembly have the option to nominate, but I don't mind having them have a confidence vote. According to Article 50, a political party needs a minimum of 10% of the total national vote to win seats in the Grand National Assembly. The votes of the parties who pass the threshold are redistributed proportionally, meaning the USP, which currently holds the lead, would be the main beneficiary. New constitutional of 8% for political parties. This may allow the Workers' Party of Bludia and the Communist Party of Sordland to be elected in the next elections. Decrease threshold to 3%. Many smaller parties will be elected in the next elections, significantly reducing the power of the USP, or do not change. We're going to go with 1. I signed the law into place for 10% for funding, I think, but 8% is reasonable still. According to Article 18 and 51, the President is able to issue decrees on political, social, and economic issues that would carry the force of law. They could not contradict the Constitution and are subject to judicial review. Therefore, the President may issue decrees in many subjects without going through the Grand National Assembly. However, the Assembly may pass legislation on the same subjects to override the presidential decrees. I don't even know on this one. One. I feel like we're just going to be going with the reformers the whole way, and we're going to lose our own party. According to the Constitution, the president shall be elected for 4 years. However, there's no mention of a term limit. I would say 2 years. You guys are saying no change? We're sure going to have the support of the reformers. This is radical. We're making a lot of freaking changes. We'll go with no change, actually. Constitution gives the Justice of the Supreme Court total immunity. Do not change. I'm not going to let the judges be impeached. That'll piss off too many of the nationalists. Not the nationalists, but the soul leaders. Honorary membership of Tarkin's soul. I kind of like the idea of every president becoming an honorary member. But we could just do no change. I'll really piss off the old guard if I try and go at him with this. I think we're going to not change this. After I made the final changes for the proposal, I showed them to my team. Looks like the amendments are ready to be proposed, but I have to say this too. The new electoral thresholds will be really difficult for the party to accept. Our guys are not fond of that idea. That's true. It'll be tough to get all of their support. Some of our members may try to openly fight against this. I'm prepared to reconsider if it comes to that. Any other comments before we proceed? I don't think I have any problems with the changes. Me either. Looks like we can proceed immediately. We'll be working on the wording of the proposal with our legal experts before we propose it. In the meantime, you must introduce the proposal to our party, sir. You'll need to take a strong speech to get them behind you, but I advise you to first talk to the leaders of both the conservative and reformist wings of the party. As far as I'm aware, Mr. Clavin supports the reforms already. Mrs. Tory will be the real problem. She became the real heavyweight after we left for the executive. Any advice regarding dealing with them? As Mr. Vectorn said, Mr. Clavern will probably be easier to persuade. We need to unite the party under this, so his support is vital. Mrs. Gloria will be tougher to break. The problem is that she's capable of turning the moderates and conservatives against us. As much as I don't want to say this, if she makes demands to change the proposal, you may need to give in. Thanks for the advice. All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up here today, having beers with our son and amending the Constitution. An exciting, well, maybe exciting is the wrong word, event-filled episode of Suzerain. I'm really enjoying this, guys. Leave me your thoughts down below. That's enough of me rambling. We've been going for long enough. But I hope you guys are enjoying the series. Let me know your thoughts. And in our next episode, we'll pick it up with some business council members in the city of Loch Haven, which is sort of an industrial powerhouse in the country. It's also a place where a lot of the wealth, what limited wealth exists in our country, is really consolidated in and around some of these business interests in this town. So we'll see how things play out in our next episode. But until then, this is the Historical Gamer saying once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out.